November 14, 1942, USS Washington's radar tracked 9 Japanese warships through complete darkness. The enemy fleet was invisible to the naked eye in pitch-black waters, but on Washington's radar screens, every ship appeared as a distinct green blip. The Japanese fleet had no idea an American battleship was watching their every move. For 16 months, Washington's crew had trained with this revolutionary radar technology. Nobody in the Pacific Fleet truly believed a battleship could win a modern naval battle. 3 nights earlier, Admiral Callahan's force had been destroyed in a confused night action. 706 Americans were dead. The Marines on Guadalcanal were barely holding. Admiral Nimitz faced an impossible choice: send battleships alone or lose Guadalcanal forever. The man chosen to lead this desperate mission was Rear Admiral Willis Augustus Lee. Lee was an Olympic champion marksman who understood ballistics like musicians understand rhythm. He understood radar as a revolution in naval warfare that most admirals did not. Lee redesigned Washington's fire control procedures, wiring radar operators directly to gun directors. It was a system never tested in combat. Tonight, Lee would find out if it worked. Lee's Task Force 64 consisted of Washington, South Dakota, and 4 destroyers. As the sun set, Lee took his force around the western tip of Guadalcanal. Every man aboard could see oil slicks and debris from Callahan's battle 3 nights before. Intelligence reported Admiral Kondo was coming with battleship Kirishima and 13 other warships. The Japanese had been training for night surface combat for 20 years. They owned the darkness, but Lee had something the Japanese did not expect. He had radar and knew how to use it. At 2300 hours, radar detected the first enemy ships 18,000 yards away. Lee faced a critical decision: open fire now or wait until the Japanese could not escape. The range closed. 12,000 yards, 10,000. Still, Lee held his fire waiting. At 8,000 yards, Lee could wait no longer. He gave the order to open fire. Washington's first salvo erupted into the night. 9 16-inch shells arced toward the enemy. The night exploded into chaos. Japanese star shells burst overhead, bathing the sound in light. Then, disaster struck. South Dakota suffered a massive electrical failure and went completely dark. Japanese searchlights locked onto the crippled battleship. Every enemy ship opened fire on her. In 90 seconds, South Dakota took 27 hits. 38 sailors were killed instantly. The American destroyers charged forward but were outnumbered and outgunned. Preston was hit first. Preston's magazines detonated. She disappeared in a ball of fire, taking 117 men with her. Walkie was hit by a torpedo and broke in half. Only 75 of her crew survived. Benham's bow was blown completely off. Gwyn was burning from multiple shell hits and withdrawing. In 15 minutes, Lee's destroyer screen had been annihilated. 4 destroyers lost or crippled. South Dakota, blind and burning, limped away from the battle. Washington was now completely alone. Lee faced 14 Japanese ships, including a battleship. Every tactical manual said he should withdraw immediately, but Lee looked at his radar screen and saw something the Japanese could not see. The Japanese had lost their formation chasing South Dakota. They had not noticed Washington at all. Lee gave the order that would define his place in naval history: charge straight into the enemy fleet. Washington accelerated to 26 knots and headed straight for the Japanese battle line alone. At 8,400 yards, practically point-blank range, Lee gave the order to open fire on Kirishima. Washington's first salvo straddled Kirishima. The second was a direct hit. Then another and another. In 7 minutes, Washington fired 75 16-inch shells. At least 9 slammed into Kirishima. 1 shell destroyed her forward turret. Another detonated in her engine room, shattering her machinery. Her steering gear was smashed. Kirishima began circling helplessly, unable to maneuver or escape Washington's guns. Admiral Kondo watched his flagship burn. He still did not know how many American battleships he faced. His cruisers Otago and Takao turned their searchlights toward Washington and launched 16 torpedoes at her. But Washington's radar tracked every torpedo. Lee ordered hard to starboard, and the battleship turned away. Every torpedo missed, some by only yards. Washington's radar had saved her from certain destruction. Washington's guns shifted to the cruisers. Her first salvo straddled Otago, sending water columns over her bridge. Admiral Kondo realized he was now the hunted. He ordered immediate withdrawal of all Japanese forces. The most powerful Japanese surface force to approach Guadalcanal turned and fled into the night. Behind them, Kirishima was dying. Her list increased steadily as flooding spread through her shattered hull. At 0100 hours, Captain Iwabuchi ordered abandon ship. The crew gathered on the slanting deck. They sang the Japanese national anthem, gave 3 banzai cheers for the emperor, then went over the side. At 0320, Kirishima rolled over and sank northwest of Savo Island, taking 300 men with her. She was the first battleship sunk by another battleship in the Pacific War, destroyed by Washington alone. As dawn broke, the full extent of the American victory became clear. The Japanese had failed completely. Japanese troopships were caught by aircraft from Henderson Field. 7 transports were sunk that morning. The final Japanese attempt to retake Guadalcanal had failed. The tide of the campaign had turned decisively. The cost had been terrible. 3 destroyers lost, over 400 Americans killed in the battle. But one statistic stood out as almost unbelievable. USS Washington had suffered no combat casualties whatsoever. The ship that had done the most damage had taken the least. It was unprecedented and would never happen again. Admiral Halsey sent a personal message to Lee, praising the glorious page written in American naval history. But the official Navy response was muted. The battle was classified as defensive, not the revolutionary victory it was. Lee's reports on radar-directed fire control were filed away with little comment. His recommendations were ignored. Washington would earn 13 battle stars, but would never again engage an enemy warship in surface combat. The Navy kept her tied to carriers, using her anti-aircraft battery instead of her revolutionary tactics. Lee continued to advocate for better tactics, but the Navy hierarchy remained committed to carrier doctrine. On August 25, 1945, 10 days after Japan surrendered, Admiral Lee died suddenly of a heart attack. The man who revolutionized battleship warfare died just as the war he helped win came to an end. Washington was decommissioned in 1947 and sold for scrap in 1961. No memorial was erected. The battleship that saved Guadalcanal and proved battleships could still dominate was reduced to scrap metal. But Washington's legacy lives on. Modern naval combat systems are direct descendants of Lee's radar fire control. Every American warship today carries the DNA of Washington's victory. The revolution Lee started lives on at sea.